Have you got my screen yet?
Yes, we're good.
Well, thanks. And I'll run through here. As you will see, I think the lesson and the overall message here, looking ahead, is we're in a very active weather pattern right now. Today is a good example of that. But there are more weather systems to deal with, unfortunately, here in the upcoming week. So probably there are going to be limited fieldwork opportunities. I know everyone is waiting and for that right moment and so forth, but it doesn't look like Mother Nature is going to be too cooperative, at least in the short term. Probably better with time, though. As I start here, I want to look at where we've been over the last several months. I'm going to just start with a couple of points on the preceding winter. And overall in Michigan and the Great Lakes region, we've got here, these are departure from normal temperatures on the left-hand side. This is for the months of December through February. And on the right-hand side, the same thing except for precipitation. And for our winter, in general, what we saw was a very mild, and unusually mild December of last year. That was followed in turn right after the holidays, right around New Year. We had a big regime change, and then we went to colder than normal. January was significantly colder than normal, state and region-wide, as was February. Not quite as much as what we saw in January. And then March has been mixed depending on where you are. But again, looking at the numbers here, one thing you can also see that showed up, and actually until the present, northern parts of the state were distinctly colder than relative to the south. And we actually have some positive departures here for that 3-month period across the far southern part of lower Michigan, but it's colder than normal up north. Precipitation, it depended on where you were, above normal precip over the north and the far south, with a little bit drier than normal conditions, especially here in west central parts of the state. Although the current weather system is doing its best to try and eliminate some of those precipitation deficits. One thing I did want to mention here, I've got graphics. I apologize, or I'm making graphics on this to have a map. It's sometimes interesting to look at the extreme coldest temperatures we have during the cold season. For air temperatures in Michigan this year, they range from minus 25 Fahrenheit, that was up in the Escanaba area back in January, to, as you can see, almost 4 above. And that was in Oceana County at our EnviroWeather Benona site that occurred. So pretty close to the averages. In northern parts of the state, though, I would also note it was a snowier than normal winter. Also above normal snowfalls for the season across eastern portions of lower Michigan, significantly less snow than normal as you move west towards the western lower peninsula. The other one that we also don't see very often here, these are 2-inch soil temperature extremes, which is interesting to look at. And I don't know, I think Christy might be on, but Christy DeFonso might be on here, but looking at survival of some of our pathogens, insects, as well as plant pathogens, disease pathogens. We had minimum temperatures or extreme minimum temperatures here at 2 inches in the soil, ranging from about 17 above to just about freezing. Most of the state was up in that 29 to 32 degree range. Snowfall and snowpack has a great deal to do with this, but I would note that the coldest temperatures here, the upper teens and low 20s, was an area of west central lower Michigan up to the northwest lower peninsula, and then eastward over towards Saginaw Bay and into portions of the Saginaw Valley. That's where we saw the coldest soil temperatures here. And again, it has a lot to do with timing and when we have snowpack on the ground and how much snowpack. With no snow, we get colder temperatures in the ground than we would otherwise with snowpack. So I'll try to have a map on that at our virtual breakfast next week. One quick one on March here so far. Northern parts of the state have still trended below normal. Daily maximum temperatures here. This is Lansing. It's fairly representative. But for southern parts of the state, we've actually been a little warmer than normal here over the last few weeks. Also wetter than normal. This is accumulated precipitation also at Lansing. So we've had, again, a fairly active weather pattern across the state and the region here over the last several weeks, which brings us up to where we are right now, or close to it. This is actually now in the past hour. This is the current radar view here, and temperatures here over the last couple of hours. Lots going on. A big, very, very strong and deep area of low pressure currently up over the far northern part of lower Michigan. And you can see all sorts of precipitation with that, especially across western sections of lower Michigan. Remember, I mentioned that they had been drier than normal in winter. Many of these areas, and down here in the lower left, this is accumulated precipitation estimated from the radar. Many of those areas have picked up 1 to almost 2 inches. I think there have been a couple that were approaching 2 inches as I last looked. And again, this is just from the event that started yesterday, and it's continuing. You can see some of the embedded enhanced echoes here. The other thing to note here on the far right-hand side with this area of low pressure, there's a very sharp cold front extending south out of that low pressure that's pushing eastward. And given the depth or the low pressure with this low pressure area, very, very strong winds circulating around us. So we're looking at a very, very windy day today over most of the state. Probably we'll see some gusts over 40 miles per hour. At times might even see some branches down, maybe some scattered power outages as well. Those are possible, but a very, very windy day. And depending on where you are, we'll see either a continuation of frozen precipitation changing over to more snow, and it will be heavy during the morning hours here, especially up in eastern upper Michigan and the far northern lower here over the next couple of hours. We could see as much as maybe 6 inches of additional accumulation there. Farther south, where it got warm in the warm sector of the system over the last 24 hours, we'll see a very, very rapid cooling with slowly falling temperatures the rest of the day. Remember, it's still in the 60s, the low 60s here, temperature-wise. The far southeastern part of the state, you can see that on the right-hand side here. But that warm air is headed to the east and away from Michigan. Will gradually drop through the 50s, 40s, and even into the 30s here. Also see some of any remaining precipitation will change over mix, and probably see a few flurries even across southern parts of the state here by late in the day. So looking at this is the current surface map here. Here's the big area of low pressure with all the precipitation you just saw. By tonight, it moves rapidly up into Quebec to our north. Cold air wrapping around the back end of it. So our precipitation should gradually come to an end here by the middle or latter part of the day, depending on what part of the state you are, again, with very, very windy conditions. And that sets up a mostly fair and drier day tomorrow. This is tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. We'll see a few lake effect flurries possible in some spots, but generally it will be a more sunny day. We should see breaks in the clouds finally giving way to the sunny skies, but cooler temperatures, mostly in the 30s to near 40s for highs. By Saturday morning, though, we've got another weather system, and that's the theme I mentioned here at the beginning. We're looking at a very, very progressive west to east pattern, active storm track across the Midwest. So the next chance for precipitation after today, already here again on Saturday for most of the state. It will be, though, significantly less. We're only talking about 1/10 of an inch or so where precipitation falls. And depending on location, either most of the areas will see probably rain or rain and snow mix. Possibly it's cold enough for that. But again, it will be relatively light and more scattered than what we see here today. Now, after that, Sunday looks dry, but then moving into next week, at least 2 weather systems to deal with. The first one probably later on Monday, and then another one in the middle of the week. And between those two, we likely will see more significant precip like we did with this particular event. And so for our total precipitation forecast over the upcoming week, a wet week. Most areas 1 to 1 1/4 inches forecast right now. And again, the majority of this would be falling next the first half of the work week next week between Monday and Thursday morning. So probably not a lot of opportunities. Temperatures will be near normal, start off a little cooler than normal, and then get back to closer to normal here by the middle of next week. But there are many, many chances for precipitation given the pattern that we're in. Quickly here, looking ahead beyond that in the medium range forecast guidance, it's more of the same. However, you can see here on our jet stream forecast pattern here for the end of the first week, beginning of the second week of April, troughing feature here over the middle of the country, looking at normal to below normal mean temperatures during that period. But the other consistent theme here in the medium range is that at least normal, if not above normal, precipitation totals would continue. And that's what we also see here in the 8 to 14 day time frame. You can see similarities, a little bit more cool air in the Great Lakes region here for that period. Again, this is the second week of April, but I think the important theme here is lots of weather systems, lots of chances for precipitation. Some of it will still be frozen, a lot of it will be rainfall, but still an active pattern that we're stuck in. And then finally on to the long lead outlooks here. These have been very, very consistent over the last few months. On the top here, we have the April outlook. Actually, we have a new version of this, or a modified version of this, due out a little bit later here today, the last day of the month. And then on the bottom here, the 3-month April through June outlook. Temperatures, mean temperatures on the left, precipitation totals on the right. And this has been consistent. Again, it is consistent with La Nina late winter, early spring conditions, because La Nina, that's what we see, the graphic down here in the bottom, continues down in the equatorial Pacific. It's weakening with time, but it's expected to become neutral here, possibly by this summer. Beyond that, there's still some guessing as to where we go from that. But again, the La Nina event we've been in since last fall is gradually going to come to an end here by the early summer. But before that, most of our outlooks, again, calling for warmer than normal mean temperatures with above normal precipitation. And so here, summarizing, a lot to talk about, more late winter than early spring here, but busy day today with cooler weather and then several chances for precipitation here over the next week. So again, not looking like a lot of outdoor opportunities, or at least you'll have to pick and choose. Sunday looks okay, Friday looks okay, but it's going to be damp. And with that, I'm going to introduce next week our speaker, Dr. Kurt Steinke, will be with us again to talk about soil fertility and nutrient management. And that's next Thursday's virtual breakfast. That's the 7th of April. So don't miss that. And with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Paul.